Nothing?
No, not work. Because I connected.
I,
646?
yeah, that's
558?
646 558.
'Cause-
He has a bad phone. His phone always switches out.
Because didn't Mr. Scatino just get in that way?
No, he redialed in.
Right, so he.
No, he went to the thing.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure how to,
Why don't you deal with him on the side and we'll
all right, so,
meeting?
yeah, I'm gonna try.
Do you want
I'm
to
just
get
trying
him-
to see, because Angela, I think, may be on also, but I can't hear her either.
Yeah, she's saying she's on, but she can hear you, but you can't hear her.
I don't know
Gotta
what number.
unmute.
What number did you dial in from? Because maybe I could unmute it from here. I have numbers, but I don't see your name pop up anywhere.
Hi,
No, what did you dial in from? Because I don't see your name popped up.
this is Jaime Kimler. I think if
What's
you're
the
on your
number?
phone to unmute yourself, you're supposed to hit *6.
What? No, what did you dial in from? From your cell phone? What's the number? So did you hit *6 and I'll mute you? *6. Yeah. I'm on now. No.
Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I got you.
Okay, good.
That's
So
Mr.
now
Marshall,
I can
Mr. Marshall.
hear-
All right, let's try
Okay.
*6. There you go, Angela, you should be on that. Can you say something?
Yep,
Can you hear me now, Tom?
Yes, you're good. All right, you guys are both on.
Okay, good.
All right.
thank
All right,
you.
great, thanks.
All right, technical difficulties have been resolved, I think, folks, I apologize. So, Mayor, update on the roll call, we now have Councilman Marson and Councilwoman Hayes on also.
Correct,
So, if it's all right with you, we'll
sorry,
proceed?
perfect.
Councilwoman Hayes, you gotta respond if you're here.
I am here.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in today. We started a little late, but we want to give everybody an opportunity to speak, and I'd like to extend it at least the 15 minutes that we were
Can you
waiting to
put
get
a
on, so everybody
A
can have
microphone next to,
their opinion
a
and their statements.
microphone near the computer, so.
The comments are limited, since we have a lot of people, to 3 minutes per speaker, with one chance to speak. But before we move on, I'd like to ask everybody for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Normally, under normal circumstances, we have these meetings at the Tice Center, but obviously with the restrictions in place and everything, this is the only way we could at least get the message out to our residents. So I just wanted to thank everyone for tuning in to discuss this very important topic, a topic that we weren't expecting would happen. But unfortunately, Saddle River has been battling with Fair Share Housing for a number of years. And finally, Fair Share Housing came into Saddle River and presented their plan. At the beginning, Saddle River was just going to build at 78 Woolworth Ave with no input from us. But from the time that they brought this to the residents and to us, we've managed to open the lines of communications with Saddle River and their governing body. The council visited or attended one of their meetings. So we are very interested in this issue, and we're looking for your input and your statement. But before I bring in John Scatino, who is our attorney, and he could give you a background of how this started, where it is, where it's going, and what could happen. So,
Yes,
John,
Mayor, thank
take
you.
over.
I'm going to be a little briefer at this point because we're going to lose our engineer in 15 minutes, and then I'm going to summarize where we started from and where we're at. Although I do want to inform the community that from the beginning, when the mayor and council were made aware of the development at 78 Woodcliff Lake Road, they immediately instructed myself, our borough administrator, and our engineer to make sure that the interests of Woodcliff Lake were protected and that the concerns, to the extent that we could, have Saddle River address them prior to having a settlement agreement approved by the court for their affordable housing plan. And as a result of the comments made by residents directly to the mayor and council, the council members and the mayor then spoke to myself, again, the borough administrator and engineer, and relayed your concerns. In some circumstances, the mayor had requested that I speak directly to certain residents, which I did, to hear their concerns directly. And at this point, we are prepared to inform not only the mayor and council, but in the lodge as to exactly where we are. And I just want everyone to bear in mind that when this started, as the mayor pointed out, the Saddle River plan, and they are required to have 132 affordable housing units, and they have spread those units out over a total of 5 locations, one of which is 78 Woodcliff Lake Road. And they started with 24 affordable housing units, not beds, units at that site. They then were attempting to reduce the 24 units to a 24-bed the disabled veterans facility, which of course we as a community were supportive of. It was going to be a much smaller structure than what a 24-unit building would require. However, Fair Share Housing and the special master, who was appointed by the court and is considered a neutral, said that that was not consistent with the plan and that they would not support a reduction of a 24-unit structure to a 24-bed facility. And without the special master's consent and without Fair Share Housing agreement to change that site from 24 units to 24 beds, it was not going to be approved by the court. In fact, there is another objector involved in this site, Ms. Torres, and she's actually has performed 2 law firms working on her behalf, and they have come to that same conclusion, that without the special master and the Fair Share Housing agreeing to that change, that it would not be approved and that was not going to occur. However, we were able to get them to reduce the site from 24 units to 12 units at this point in time. And as you can imagine, a 12-unit structure will be much smaller than a 24-unit structure. I'm going to go into the other parameters that they have agreed to at this point. And I do want to again point out that with respect to the other 4 locations, they have no parameters, nor is Saddle River at this point agreeing to any parameters with respect to those other sites, other than the number of units that will be included at those sites. So we are in a much better position with respect to this site than with respect to the other sites. And at this time, I would like our engineer, Evan Jacobs, to present to the public what a 12-unit structure would look like on the site, what its footprint would be, and what its setbacks would be. So Evan, you're on at this time? Evan? Tom?
I'm trying. Evan, you gotta you're on mute.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
You're on.
You wouldn't let me, it was locked by the administrator. Anyway,
Hi,
good evening, everybody. I'm gonna try to share my screen here. We'll see if this can work. I apologize for the image quality in advance. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes, a little blurry.
Okay, again, I apologize for the image quality, but the existing site, this one's a little bit clearer. This is a map that we put together. The existing site is located on Woodcliff Lake Road, kind of at the intersection of Apple Ridge. Obviously, Apple Ridge does not connect through to there, but the right-of-way does. The applicant, or the town has put together, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one, has put together this concept plan showing this building located in the northeast corner of the property with a single driveway entrance off of Woodcliff Lake Road from the Saddle River side, with parking along the westerly and southerly sides of the building. You'll notice this large green area at the bottom of the site here. These are overlapping environmental buffers. Again, I apologize for the image quality, but if you can see possibly, we can draw this line here. Everybody see this? Oops, that's bad. Everybody see this line?
Yes.
This represents a 300-foot buffer off of the Musquapsing Brook, which is actually in Woodcliff Lake. It's not on the site, but there's a 300-foot buffer off of the brook, which encroaches on this property here. There's additionally this line that's right here. This is the approximate limit of the wetlands that were delineated on the site by a third-party wetland delineator. It's their impression that these wetlands would have a 50-foot buffer, and that line is represented over here by this green line here, because it's easier to see here. So the back portion of this site here is largely undevelopable and will remain as is. Removing vegetation and clearing trees and things like that is very prohibited, and especially on a site like this, there's nowhere to replant those trees, so my impression will be that this remains completely intact from what it is today. As John said, the intention was to have 12 units, 6 per floor for 2 floors, I believe, with parking provided for the residents and for visitors. In terms of the site setbacks, currently the way that the Saddle River ordinance reads in terms of zoning, both the frontage on Apple Ridge Road and Woodcliff Lake Road would be considered fronting streets. So there's a front yard setback that really should be applied on both streets, which is 125 feet in Saddle River. This is obviously not 125 feet from the right-of-ways, so this would require some sort of zoning, either variance or an overlay zone or some sort of amendment to the zoning to permit the structure to be located where it is. That's generally all I have. We don't really have a full application in front of us. This is really just a concept plan and a relatively.
Evan, not to interrupt you, but is this the latest concept plan? Because I thought there was one with all the parking in the front that was maybe the latest one. I have one that I'll share that I believe may be the.
Are you referring to this one, Tom?
Hold on, I'm trying to see what you have up.
Can everybody see this?
Oh my gosh. I can't see the whole.
I thought the other one was the later one.
I can't see it all on my computer, but I thought the latest plan had all the parking in the front. That's why
Can people see my screen?
I can't tell, and now I can't see everybody else. So. Nance, maybe you know, or Steve, I think you.
May 20, it's May 12, yeah, it's May 20.
I'm sorry.
May
22nd, right?
I don't know that I have that.
Am I allowed to share the screen? No.
Yes, I think you can.
I stop.
I'm
I
trying.
have it, and I can share it if you want.
Yeah, I can stop sharing.
Yeah, stop sharing, and then, Steve, I have one here that says 522. I'm not sure if that's the one the same one you have.
That's the one I believe is. This is the one that's up. Can
Right,
everybody see that one?
that's the one that I had also, that's why I was trying to find it on the system. That's what I believe is the latest one. And
Yeah,
John
I
may
can
be able to.
rotate the view. Here, you want to look at it conceptually. That's how it would look, as I understand it. So the parking is all in the front. Okay, just to be clear. Sorry, I'm gonna mute myself now.
No, so it's a similar concept in the sense that the back of the property is really preserved and all the development is occurring in the front. This layout here, while it does kind of disregard the front yard setback along Apple Ridge Road, it is further setback from Woodcliff Lake Road.
Do we know, Evan, how far back from Apple Ridge? I always thought it was within the zoning. I didn't realize it was not going to be as of right.
Well, I do not have the benefit of having seen this particular plan, but in looking at the other houses, other buildings along the road there, it could be close, but I'd have to measure this and I'd have to see it to scale. It's my opinion, though, that based on the definition in the Saddle River ordinance, the Apple Ridge Road, which is the side of this development here, is a right-of-way. Even though it's in a different town, it's a right-of-way, and there should be a 125-foot setback from that. So that is not what's shown here. They're showing, some sort of nominal setback there, maybe 30 or 40 feet. I can't really tell from the scale here. Right now, I don't believe that this is as of right. I think there would have to be some sort of, I don't know if it would be a variance or if they would do an overlay zone or something like that. But that's, again, this is just a concept plan. There's not even any dimensions around as far as the setbacks, even the building size. So it really is at a planning level. I guess come final design is when they really put together the nuts and bolts and provide all the setbacks and any relief that they needed.
Do you know in the ordinance what their side setback is?
I'd have to pull that up if you give me a minute. Actually, it might take me a few minutes to find out. I don't know if it's time, but typically they're on the order of somewhere between 25 and 35 to 50 feet, depending on, this is a single-family residence zone, but again, they could apply different zoning here. They could amend the zoning and provide an overlay zone, which allows for reduced side yard, front yard, rear yard setbacks, impervious coverage, whatever they see fit.
That may be a question for John. John, wouldn't they, because it's not really it is residential, but it's not single family. I gather that their zoning is probably single family, that they would probably do some type of overlay or zone there.
It's in the full agreement that they will be doing overlay zones. I'm sure they're going to do an overlay zone at this site, although they have stated, and we will attempt to hold them to it, that they are going to have the same setbacks with respect to the structure as they would with respect to whether it was a private developer. So I think that they may have sent us something, which I guess Evan does not have, that indicates what the setbacks are going to be.
Yes.
In fact, that's what I sent. I sent that to the mayor and council last week with this rendering. There was another page with an attachment that set forth the setbacks. So if someone has that, perhaps they can. But this is a long discussion this evening, and I think it's one of the issues that we've had from the beginning, that we expect them to maintain acceptable and reasonable side yard setbacks, especially as it pertains to abutting Apple Ridge Road. The other things I want to point out with respect to this structure is that there will be a 2.5-story building. It will have the same height as other buildings in the area. They describe it and have instructed or informed us that the architect will design a building that when looking at it, we'll look at as a very large one-family dwelling, similar to the Rosie O'Donnell former dwelling in Saddle River. They also indicated that they will limit the number of doorways. We are encouraging and seeking them to only have one entrance into the front of the building, and of course, you're going to have a side yard or rear yard door, just like any one-family dwelling would have. But certainly, again, to give the appearance of a large home versus an apartment building. Also, which I know was of major importance to the governing body, as well as the residents, is Apple Ridge Road will not be open, nor will there be any access from Apple Ridge Road from any point of the site onto the roadway. So they have agreed to include that in their restrictions as well. They've also agreed, and this is not as definitive as the borough would like at this point, but they have agreed to language that they will have adequate landscape buffers along Apple Ridge Road and along the rear of the property, and with respect to any aspect of this property that would be visible from Woodcliff Lake. So they've also already agreed to include language to that effect in the agreement. As Evan has mentioned, the parking will be in front of the building. As you can see from the wetlands, they've agreed that they will not seek any waivers or encroach upon the wetlands whatsoever, which means that the area behind the structure will remain as it presently is, and I believe that's a significant setback from the rear property line with respect to the amount of the property that is dedicated to the wetlands. Let me just see. The number of units, again, is at this point, and this number has fluctuated, and I think everyone's aware of that, from 24 units to 24 beds to 12 units. It's only 12 units if the Borough of Woodcliff Lake signs off on a settlement with respect to the terms that I've just outlined. If there's no agreement with Woodcliff Lake, then they will submit a plan for 16 units. I shouldn't say they'll submit, they already have submitted a plan for 16 units. That plan and support shared houses. It will also be supported by the special master, and absent some significant reason that we are not aware of at this point, it is strongly anticipated that the court would approve a settlement for 16 units. So at this point in time, what the Borough of Woodcliff Lake is considering is a plan for 12 units with specific parameters and specific concerns that were raised by Woodcliff Lake be included in a settlement agreement versus no parameters and a 16 unit structure. There is going to be one other opportunity with Saddle River. Our mayor, Mayor Rendo, has a very good relationship with the mayor of Saddle River. And the two mayors have details and specifics, because the more detail in the plan we feel, the better it will protect Woodcliff Lake and also avert disputes going forward. So the mayors, after tonight's meeting, have agreed to meet to get further detail into a settlement agreement, again, with respect to setbacks and with respect to landscaping, and ensuring that there's a significant buffer along the Woodcliff Lake property line.
John, I have two questions for you. There is another litigant in this case, which is a Saddle River resident. Could you please explain to the residents where we are with that litigant? And the second part of the question is, what would happen if we would fight this, even if that resident decides to go along with the development? in Saddle River, what would happen to Woodcliff Lake if we would decide to litigate this?
Okay, yes. So, the first question regarding the neighbor who, we have been working very closely with their law firm. There was a time where we were communicating multiple times a day because we felt there was more leverage to be having a united front with the other objector. And they are waiting on the position we take. They are in agreement that the best that we can accomplish at this site is 12 units, and they're also in agreement that the best that we can hope to accomplish is the restrictions or parameters, if you will, that I laid out earlier. If we do not accept submitted a 16-unit plan, they will go forward with that, and if the matter is litigated and Saddle River is successful, not only will the objectors, whether it is us and the property owner or just Woodcliff Lake, we will be responsible also for fair share housing legal fees. So there is a fee shifting with respect to litigation involving affordable housing. And if anybody has been following the Woodcliff Lakes, I call it a fiasco because they they took a no settlement position. The numbers levied by the court were significantly higher than what a settlement agreement would have involved, and now they're going to be hit with significant legal fees submitted by Fair Share Housing. And they're also under a microscope at this point with respect to any decisions that they make when it comes to affordable housing in light of their the position that they took. Everyone has to bear in mind the obvious, which is this property is not located in Woodcliff Lake. So we do not have the same control that we would have if the property was located in Woodcliff Lake. We do have some leverage, as I think many residents are aware, because of the sewer system, that Saddle River is seeking to tie into our sewer system. And we have already informed Saddle River that unless we can come to some type of settlement, we would oppose their efforts to tie into our sewer system. We do, however, will have difficulty in being successful if, in fact, Saddle River, which they have taken this position, they will pay for any and all costs associated with tying into our sewer system, as well as making sure that the borough on an annual basis is fully funded for all costs associated with the water flow through, as well as the maintenance of the line. Also, we already have permitted several homes in Saddle River to tie into our sewer system. Now, a question was raised by a resident, well, what occurs if down the road they realize they cannot tie into our sewer system? Well, that would all be on Saddle River. The site is no longer feasible because it's not cost efficient. The alternatives, they may look to put in septic tanks, which many homes in Saddle River have. But again, that would be their problem. It would not be our problem. So that would not impact us negatively in any way if down the road Saddle River determines that the ability to tie into our sewer system is not feasible. Nor, for that matter, if it is ultimately determined because of the wetlands, because there is an issue with respect to wildlife that may further increase the setback from 50 feet to 150 feet. Again, regardless of the agreement we enter into, Saddle River in all likelihood would not be able to build 12 units on the site. Perhaps they would not be able to build a reasonable number of units at all, and they perhaps would relocate. But again, that would not negatively impact Woodcliff Lake entering into an agreement now, because those are factors that would only impact Saddle River and their ability to move forward at this site.
Do we know the size of the units at this point and the number of bedrooms?
Yes. The number of bedrooms, which we also tried to get reduced. Again, as everyone, I believe, is aware, at least at this point, we were hoping and supporting a 24-unit facility, as was Saddle River, as was the neighbor objector.
24 bed facility.
24 bed, I'm sorry, 24 bed facility. This, the number of units here are in accordance with the guidelines, which again, Fair Share Housing and the Special Master are not willing to deviate from. That would involve a total of 26 beds. So it would be an increase of 2 beds over the 24 bed, facility that was initially, that was at one point discussed for disabled veterans. So it is a minimal increase in the number of beds. It's also, the 24 units, just for everyone's edification, would have involved a 4-story structure, which would have been completely out of character for the neighborhood, and would have certainly appeared to be a multiple dwelling from any visual aspect from the roadway or from Apple Ridge Road. So again, we with the governing body's support and with the objecting neighbors' support, have been able to significantly downsize this site. Because again, just to point this out once more, Saddle River has to provide 132 units. So every unit that's removed from this site has to go to another site. And there is also litigation with one of those other sites. And if they're successful in that litigation, without a settlement in place for this site, it would not preclude Saddle River from saying, well, because we now have to reduce one of the other sites by 4 units, let's go back to the 78 Woodcliff Lake Road site and add it to that site because we're not down to any number there. However, if we enter into a settlement agreement that is approved by the court for this site, it would be extremely difficult for Saddle River to then add additional units to this site at that point. At that point, the maximum number of units would be low, and down from there if there's difficulty developing this site.
So John, when we talk about the brook and the waterways, there is a 300-foot buffer, as Evan stated, from the brooks. But based on Fair Share Housing regulations, they will be able to get a waiver of those buffers. Is that correct?
Well, they could certainly apply for one. And again, when you're dealing with affordable housing projects, you have to put aside all the rules that are typically in play as if this was a private developer building a one-family estate. You know, they would be extremely difficult for someone to get any of the zoning changed and to encroach upon the wetland setback at all. But the affordable housing, I'm going to use the term favored status because that's what it is. When you propose an affordable housing project, you receive favored status, which means all the rules that would typically apply can be waived or relaxed or exceptions made. And if we enter into a settlement, again, those options would be taken off the table with respect to this site.
Okay, so I think I'm going to open it up to the public, but before I do so, just for total transparency, I just want to let the public know that the mayor called me on, I think it was Friday, to discuss this. He indicated that he's willing to work with Woodcliff Lake in terms of, discussing the project and protecting the buffers and the property lines along Apple Ridge Road. And in his own words, he said, Carlos, this is Saddle River. We're going to build to the standards of Saddle River. We're not going to build to what they dictate to us. They say it's going to look like a Saddle River home on that property. And we will give you what you would request in terms of the buffering, whether it's trees, pine trees, burns, or whatever. So, in essence, they're willing to work with us. What they don't want is basically to dictate to them what we should be doing, because it is their property, it is their town, and their council has to make the best decision for their residents. And based on the pressures they have from Fair Share Housing, they have to make the best decision they can for them. but they are willing, as John said, and then he said, look, if we're litigating this, we could shift more housing there to give us more in the future, additional units to go into the fair share housing count. So that's where the 16 unit and 4 stories came in. So, but they're willing to accept the 12 units, 24 beds, and work with us concerning the drainage, the buffers, and the trees. So, with that being said, if it's okay with the council, could we move to open to the public for questions?
Mayor, if I can, just one thing that I think John may be able to clarify that I know was a big concern to some of the residents. John, and correct me if I'm wrong, under the last dialogue we've had, there are no plans to open the road into Apple Ridge Road, into our road, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely, that was a major concern, and in Saddle River, at this point, is an agreement, and it would be specifically contained within the settlement agreement that Apple Ridge Road will not be open, nor will there be any access from the site onto Apple Ridge Road. I know that was very important to the mayor and council members, and I know that was very important to the members of the community that reside in that area. And as I was instructed by the mayor and council, that would be a deal breaker for us. And Saddle River has agreed to include that. And I do want to just make one other comment as what the mayor said, because this is very important. And I know I touched on it as well. This is Saddle River's property. And we took from the position, and the council and the mayor were in agreement, we are not going to take a hostile approach with Saddle River, that we want to work with them as good neighbors would to come to an amicable resolution. Because if both communities, get their backs up, it's only going to lead to costly litigation. And I think that at the end of the day, Woodcliff Lake would get less of its issues addressed than it would through an amicable settlement.
Very good. Tom,
Yes, sir.
could we open to the public now?
You have to make a motion. Ms. Gross, second?
Who?
You need a second? Mr. Falanga is signaling it. We're having trouble. I'm having trouble on my end. I'm muting everybody, folks, so I'm doing my best. And, so all in favor? I think that's an aye. Ayes have it. I'm gonna go there. I think some people are calling, because I think we're having, I lost my ability to mute and unmute, and I'm trying, so I think somebody may be trying to call in. So we'll try to do both ways. I'm afraid to do too many controls here, because I don't want to close the whole meeting by mistake.
Do you want me to do the phone, Tom, for you? Are you okay?
So take a phone call or Zoom residents?
Well, if they want to call in, 201-391-4977, extension 203, and I'm trying to unmute, but
There's a lot on there.
there's a lot of folks don't have any video, so I can't tell if they're trying to tell me something. If you're on video, raise your, okay, I see Mr. Kudo. I think,
Okay.
Mr. Kudo, you should be good. You hit *6, sir. Are you in?
I have a quick,
Yes, Mr. Kudo, right? Mr. Kudo.
Got it.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have a question. This is the settlement to restrict the height to 2.5 stories?
Yes.
Okay. On my opinion, I would support having this settlement between the two towns. Will be the best for us to protect against building on the area that's protected now. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Silver, I see you waving your hand.
If people want, they can go on, if they go on the participant button, if they're on the app, they can raise their hand too, electronically.
The problem I'm having, Steve, is I'm not seeing all of them coming up here for some reason. Mr. Silver, I think,
First name?
you should be able to hit *6 or unmute yourself, and we just need your first name. I could just tell that, I don't think you're Allison.
No, Dan.
So I have a question. You mentioned before, obviously, that with the wetlands, there's potential to move the 50-yard barrier to 150 yards. When does that? 150 feet. When do we find that out? And just for context for other people on the phone, I'm in the property directly across the Apple Ridge Road.
Well, when they do a full environmental study of the site, which the DEP will require, they're going to request of the wildlife. And if there is a protected wildlife species in that area, the setback, according to our engineer, would be more than 50 feet, it would be 150 feet. But that probably wouldn't occur until, a few months down the road.
But doesn't that seem like we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit? Like, why are we rendering and doing everything without understanding that first?
Well, I don't know how many people listened to the judge, and he, when he had the hearing, although it was adjourned, he did make opening comments. And actually, they're the same opening comments that all the judges are required to make at the start of a hearing regarding whether the plan should be approved. And in that hearing, he said, this is not the time to bring up zoning issues or issues regarding the development of the site. That's for down the road. So why we have to make a decision now is because there is a hearing scheduled, I believe the new date is July 10th, and an agreement is going to be approved at that time. It's going to be an agreement that includes our consent to the development of this site as proposed, or it's going to include a 16-unit development. Again, as I stated earlier, if down the road Saddle River has difficulty with developing this site, that doesn't negatively impact us at all. It just means it's going to be less than 12 units on the site. So there's no impediment to Saddle River moving ahead with getting their agreement approved, which includes 12 units at the site, regardless of what the wildlife shows for the property.
Okay, anyone else?
Ms. Yakobin, I see you, but I had somebody that called in, so let me grab them first. Yes, please state your name and,
Josephine Higgins, who works the place. I think the work that you've done on this is fantastic. I don't think that we in any way can oppose this because we would see a far denser population there of 16 instead of 12, and also the courts can also decide whatever else they want to do. And I think the work to plans has been well done, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
thank you, Mayor.
What?
This is,
Ms. Yakobin, I think you're next.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am?
Great. Hey, Tony.
Hi.
Okay, I just have a few comments. I want to echo what Josephine said. I think you guys have done a lot of great work and negotiation on this. Having lived through other units and developments nearby my house, I know that getting it down to 12 is pretty incredible as it is. But I do have a couple questions that there's going to be on the Woodcliff Lake sewer system. I know most of Saddle River does not have sewers. And, the property may be located in Saddle River, but I know that for Saddle River Grand, there was a portion that had to feed into the Woodcliff Lake sewer system, and that's how we were initially trying to fight that. So I would like to know if that's been looked at. The other thing I wanted to ask about was the waterway. The Muskrat Sink Brook is a protected waterway. And that line is awfully close there. I'd like to know if anyone has contacted the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection about the potential stormwater runoff. There were studies done by Rutgers University. They're available online 2006, and then again in August of 2011, specifically of the properties impacted by the brook. This brook feeds the drinking water source for 800,000 residents. And as such, there were restoration and protection plans in place for the brook. It was declared an impaired waterway by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. So, they should be made aware of this. I understand there's an order of operations here, and that maybe is going to be done down the road, and maybe that won't impact the agreement, but it's something we need to look at. It's a serious consideration, and as I think it was Adam that said, before we put the cart before the horse, maybe now we'll call into the Department of Environmental Protection and show them this rendering and ask them what they think about the impact of those parking spaces on stormwater runoff in the brook.
Thank you. Okay, Mayor, let me address the questions first with respect to the sewer system. A formal study has not been done, although our engineer believes that our sewer system can handle a 12-unit building on the property. But that being said, the agreement would specifically provide that any improvements that need to be made to the sewer system to accept or to allow for the tie-in of this property would be fully borne by Saddle River. So I just want to give an example, although I'm not saying this is the case here. But typically what occurs is the line may not be big enough. So let's say there's a 12-inch pipe there, and to put a 24-inch pipe in at their sole cost and expense, which would actually be an improvement to the line. And at that point, it may be too costly for them to do, and again, that's all on them. So they may say, you know what, we can't even tie it to the sewer system. We didn't realize we were going to have to put all this infrastructure into place, and it's no longer cost feasible. So against Woodcliff Lake would have no exposure if that were to be the outcome, because the rest of the agreement will get them to tie into or they wouldn't be able, I should say, to tie into our sewer system. As to the environmental impact or the concerns of the environmental impact, I know Saddle River has done a preliminary plan with respect to it. If there are no encroachments and they are not seeking any waivers from the DEP, they don't have to file an application with the DEP. If they do, if they come within, if the structure comes within the allowable setback that requires some type of approval from the DEP, which they're agreeing not to seek, by the way, they then would have to go to a formal application process, and it would be completely reviewed by the DEP, and if there was any negative impact to the wetlands area, they wouldn't get any type of approval. But when it comes time to present the plan, I can assure you that our engineer will be looking at the plan and determining whether there is any impact on the wetlands, and if there is, we will notify the DEP ourselves.
Thank you, John. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mayor, I see somebody else, I think Mr. Bachman. I think you had your hand up.
Hello?
Hi, yes.
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you just give your name, just so I make sure, because there's a name on here, but I don't know if that's correct.
Alan Bachman.
Yeah,
Yes.
and this is his wife Nancy Bachman speaking. Just have a question. First of all, thank you for all the hard work. Everyone has been working incredibly hard. I really appreciate it. I have a question. We were talking about this is going to be a 26-bed unit. What is the legal capacity of residents with a 26-bed unit? Because, there's a mother and father, there's two people for that bed, there's sometimes you may, fit, 2 beds in one room. What is the legal capacity of this unit, this structure?
And also, what's the total square footage of the structure?
I don't have, and our engineer is now on the line in terms of what the footprint of the building is, so I can't answer that question now, but I'm sure we can get that information. With respect to the number of residents, and I think we may have discussed this in one of our phone conversations, Saddle River is going to have to appoint a company, more than likely, to administer their affordable housing program. And what that company does is they monitor and ensure that all the affordable housing regulations are followed with respect to the occupants. So anybody who is allowed to live in one of these affordable housing units are going to have to meet the income levels, and they will not allow multiple families to live in each of these units because it's not permitted.
and it's going to be very closely watched, because the last thing anybody for other than families who need affordable housing units. It also will be restricted by the fire code. There's only so many people and so many occupants that you're permitted to have in any structure. And also, Saddle River, I don't know that number offhand, because I think you were going to need more detail, and I'm really not completely up to date on what the fire code requirements are. The other aspect of this is, I am sure Saddle River, as most communities have a restriction on the number of families that can live in a dwelling, because you don't want 2 and 3 families living in a one-family house, because it changes the one family into a boarding house. So, as the mayor mentioned there earlier, Saddle River themselves are going to police this, because they don't want this building to be anything other than what it can, to be as consistent as it can be with the requirements and restrictions that currently exist in Saddle River. I think it's a fair concern with respect to the number of occupants, but I think that it will be strictly enforced, and I think that it will be very difficult for anyone to put any more residents in that are permitted. And although there could be a maximum because of the number of beds, you look at the other side of it, there's a minimum number too. I mean, these 1-bedroom units may only have 1 or 2 people in it.
Correct.
Obviously, the 3 bedrooms are more than likely going to have a couple of children. Whether that's 2 or 3 will remain to be seen. So although there may be a high number, there's also a potential of a low number as well as at the site.
And Mr. Scatino, I just want to add, just from experience, when it's affordable housing like that, it's actually much more enforced, because not only do they have to meet those income requirements, they have to meet them every year. So every year it's monitored. Similar, we have some on Broadway, on the Hillsdale border, that's monitored, or that's administered through the county program to the Greater Bergen, and every year they review that. They also make sure that they're abiding by all the HUD regulations, which, as you say, have a lot of those regulations in place. So unlike homes, we're left up to a lot of times neighbors to let us know that some folks have, gone overboard. This is actually, you could argue that it's actually policed even better.
Yeah, I'm not, and I get that part, but what I really was trying to understand is, I'm just wondering what the maximum capacity could be, because it would be very reasonable to have 2 people, like mother and father, in there. So it looks like, 26 beds, you could easily have 52 people living. I live right next door, so I could have 52 new neighbors next door.
Well, there's only 12 apartments.
My question, that's a big.
Well, just so you know, there's also, the income requirements based on the size of the household. So, a household are only eligible for like if you have a household of 2 people and you apply to get these units, you cannot get a 3-bedroom or even a 2-bedroom. If you have, 3 people, then you could get a 2-bedroom. So they're very strict in that regard. That's all administered to HUD.
Got it.
Okay.
John, hold on, Mr. Kindler. John, and it's also the ordinances, local ordinance limit the amount of residents per square foot of an apartment. Isn't that correct?
Yes, many towns have restrictions with respect to that as well. And the other thing I just want to point out, the penalty is severe if someone, for example, qualified on their income, and then they brought another adult in, and now they don't qualify. They're gonna get evicted. They're gonna lose the ability to stay in the unit. So it's a heavy price to pay to try to circumvent the rules. And as our borough administrator pointed out, these are reviewed annually, and if there's a complaint made, they're gonna investigate immediately. Because again, the last thing they want is affordable housing units being utilized for other than families that are in need and qualify for affordable housing.
Mr. Kindler?
Yeah, hi, just 3 quick points. One, I understand the Department's concern because units or beds, what they call it, especially the next door neighbors, really want to know is how many people will be there. So I think it's important to give those next door neighbors an answer when you get the information as to what will be the maximum number of people that will be allowed to live in this new development. Secondly, the wetlands buffer, is there going to be any prohibition on people utilizing that buffer for recreation? And then third, I think someone had said that there will be no access from the site onto Apple Ridge. Does that mean just vehicular access, or is there any type of other access that's going to be prohibited?
Well, again, I think that the mayor and council, and I believe Saddle River, as the mayor indicated, is in agreement. The side of that property is going to be buffered, perhaps with a berm and trees. Now, is there going to be a walkway? No. I mean, could someone theoretically try to get through? Maybe, but it's not going to be that, okay, let's walk here, there's a pathway to get through to Apple Ridge Road. As to the wetlands, you can't even cut a tree in wetlands without being subject to a fine by the DEP and to restoration of whatever you touch. So no, there will not be any recreational use in the wetlands. Could somebody walk on it? I would imagine they could walk on it, but they cannot disrupt it. And that's strictly enforced as well.
John, in the Saddle River resident Torres, in her settlement agreement, she's getting Saddle River to build a fence to separate her property from the developments. Is that correct?
I believe so, Mayor, but she wanted a gate, so I don't really, I can find that out, but I know she wanted in the agreement that she would have a gate. So I don't really know what that purpose was.
Is it far-fetched to ask Saddle River if the residents desire to put in fencing behind the trees of the berm to protect the neighborhood?
No, I don't think so, and I think that they would probably be in agreement with that.
I think so.
Mayor, I lost my whole screen. I don't know if can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
But I cannot see any of the participants anymore, so they're gonna have to call in.
Did anybody raise their hands?
There was a couple raised their hands. I saw Mr. Casal and somebody else. But they already went. We gotta go through but I have somebody on the line, so let me bring them on first, on the phone. Yes, please state your name.
Hi, it's Craig Marston. How you doing?
Hi, Mr. Marston. You don't have to call in, you're the councilman. I'm sorry. I couldn't get you on there. We're having some technical difficulties, sir.
I understand. I've heard everything. So it was just to reiterate is that although you can't, the question, I guess, just the observation is although you can't guarantee that there will be no access onto Apple Ridge, the way that this will be designed plus other barriers that either through plantings or other means, it's going to be extremely difficult for somebody to cut through the back onto Apple Ridge. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That was it, Tom.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
I'd like to give this over, I mean, it's a different resident, so let me give her an
It's your meeting, Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms.
I don't
Silver.
know if I could unmute her. That's the problem. I can't see her.
She could unmute herself, can't she?
She could try. I'm not sure if it'll work, but go ahead. Sure. Oh, wait. Now I'm back again. Hold on. I see you, Allison. Hold on. Here we go. Now you're good.
Go ahead.
I got
Ms.
it.
Silver.
Sorry. So I just wanted to know, it was really never fully explained to us, really why the 24 beds went down to 12 units. So it's my understanding that the Saddle River objector is the reason that this happened and nothing that Woodcliff Lake negotiated. So I understand that we're happy that we were able to get the number from 24 to 12, but that was nothing did by Woodcliff Lake. That has to do with the Saddle River objector. And so from my understanding, that may be the reason, because of the Saddle River objector's lawsuit, that this went from 24 bed, the 24 bed veteran facility to now units. And so you know, I've been involved in this since the very first minute I saw, I guess, a drone flying above my house. Like, I have been here every step of the way, and I was told in a council meeting on the record, I was told by Mr. Burgess, and then at the last minute, because of a lawsuit by a Saddle River objector, everything changed. And so I happen to think that 24 beds would be better for her too. I'm just confused.
Okay, so,
I don't really know when or what Woodcliff Lake Council did to bring this number down.
okay, so let me just, go through somewhat what occurred. No one has filed a suit. We're objectors. Ms. Torres didn't file a suit. She has attorneys representing her as an objector. Just as Woodcliff Lake, we are now objectors to the Saddle River plan. Saddle River, more than anybody, wanted to put 24-bed facility for disabled veterans. That was their concept. And they thought the agreement would allow them to do so. Ms. Torres was not opposed. She wanted everybody wanted the 24-bed facility, except for the special master and fair share housing. And unfortunately, they are the two most important people with respect to getting a resolution as to the number of units at this site. So it wasn't Ms. Torres, it wasn't Saddle River, and it certainly wasn't us. We all supported the 24-bed facility. As to getting the reduction, I'm sure the attorneys for Ms. Torres appreciate your feeling that it was as a result of Ms. Torres. I can assure you that if you spoke to their attorneys, they would tell you that without our involvement, the number of units would not have been reduced to 24 to 12, because we have more leverage than she does as a resident because of our sewer system and because of our zoning that's in place on our side. So it wasn't because of Ms. Torres's objection that the site was reduced from 24 units to 12 units, nor was it because of her objection that it was changed from what the concept of Saddle River was hoping for, 24-bed disabled veterans. It was as a result of a joint effort that the units were changed. And again, it's the recognition by both Ms. Torres' attorneys as well as my own opinion that without the special master's support and without fair share housing's approval, that the 24-bed facility is off the table. It's off the table completely. It would be not prudent at all to continue to pursue that without their support. And the 12-unit structure at this point is the most feasible result that we can achieve.
John, do you mind if I jump in for a second and ask a question?
Yes.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate Neglia's work in getting the wetlands buffers, and Woodcliff Lake being an objector, and working with Saddle River on this issue. And I'm especially pleased to hear that through the mayor that Saddle River is working with Woodcliff Lake, because certainly about 10 Woodcliff Lake single-family homes are within that 200-foot buffer of this property. So I'm glad to hear that we're all working together. But my question is kind of what Ms. Silfer is saying, and I want to just correct what Ms. Bachman and Mr. Kindler, they kept calling the units beds, and it is a little bit confusing, and I just want to be clear for everybody's benefit that we're talking about 12 family units now. The old news is 24 beds. So I just want to make that clear for everybody. But my question, John, and maybe we could get a little bit more information on this. You spoke about an RDP of 132 across 5 locations. Saddle River has to come up with this 132 credits, if you will. I don't want to call them units because I don't want to get it confused with rental units or bed units. But let's just call them credits. And they can, Saddle River can skin that cat in a million ways. And they have to come up with that, and that's on them. What I'm having trouble bridging the gap to is Saddle River, Mr. Burgess did say at a council meeting with maybe 500 people in the room that the model was shifting to 24 beds. And residents in the room were like, oh, okay, we can, we understand that we support the disabled veterans, and we can get on board with that model. These 12-family rental units is coming in a little bit late, and I wonder, I'd like to understand better the reason why. And I heard you say that the Fair Share Housing and the Special Master feel it's not consistent with the plan, but my question is why? So in my experience on the Fair Share Housing Committee for Woodcliff Lake, is when we put the veterans up on north of Broadway, and we put, I think, 12 units there, we got a one-to-one credit. What does that mean? Well, for 12 credits, for the 12 units for veterans, we got 24 credits because it was a one-to-one. There's an algorithm involved there. You get some kind of a credit for family rentals as well. I thought the 24 beds was excellent because you're going to get more of that bonus credit, if you will, as opposed to family rentals, and then it would be a win for Fair Share Housing, it'd be a win for Woodcliff Lake residents, and to any other objectors like the Torres is. So I'm kind of curious as to why the 24-bed model is, why the Special Master didn't find it consistent with the plan, simply because I think more credits for Saddle River will come out of this. Now, with that said, I also understand as part of Fair Share Housing that Saddle River needs to meet a certain number of family rental units to come to a settlement. But what I'm hoping is the other 4 locations, like you said, it's 5 locations, that would be met in one of the larger developments, one of the 4 other larger developments, that family rental requirement, if you will. Could we, and this might not be a question you can answer today, but can we get an understanding of what is not consistent with the plan and what really happened numerically? I just want to see the numbers on how we lost those 24 beds when it became 12 family rental units.
Okay, well, I can actually answer that question now, and you are correct with the
can't hear him.
the disabled veteran facility. Each bed is the equivalent of 1 unit, which was why Mr. Burgess felt that this site could get the credit for 24 units by having a 24 disabled veteran facility. However, it's not that it was inconsistent with the plan. It was inconsistent with the language in the settlement agreement. Fair Share Housing, the Special Master, Mr. Banish, Saddle River's attorney, as well as the court, the judge actually participated in the final provisions that had to go into the settlement agreement. And it was Fair Share Housing's position and the Special Master's position that this site called for a 24-unit structure for families, not for disabled veterans and not for beds. So although you're correct, 1 bed would really be the equivalent of a credit, and Saddle River, again, more than anyone, wanted it to be able to do that. When the Special Master and Fair Share Housing said that's not what we discussed, that was not the intent of the agreement, and we don't support it, and we feel extremely confident that the judge is going to agree that the intent of the agreement for this site was for 24 units, or 24 family units, and not beds. Saddle River and Ms. Torres as well conceded that we would not, if I'm going to include us in the we would not be successful in pursuing that with the position taken by the Special Master and Fair Share Housing. And again, I just want to emphasize further why the Special Master has so much influence. The Special Master is appointed by the court to essentially be a neutral. In other words, you don't take any sides. You do what is right. You come back to the court and you make sure that whatever agreement is entered into is consistent with the goals and objectives of affordable housing. And therefore, the Special Master has significant weight in determining what the judge will approve. In fact, if you listen in on the hearing when it eventually takes place, the Special Master will testify, and the Special Master is going to specifically have to answer questions and provide testimony as to why this plan is consistent with the affordable housing objectives. So I think everyone can understand that the So what do we feel when I push this?
So my question, John, so help me understand. So right now we're reopening up that settlement agreement. You're absolutely right. Some of the other residents, I looked at the terms and conditions. It said 24 family rental units, and 12 family rental units is better than 24 in terms of our infrastructure and traffic and lighting and you know, privacy and shrubs and all the things that residents are concerned about. But again, what I guess I can't wrap my head around is if 24 beds are on the table and you're in agreement with me that that would equate to 48 credits towards their 132 RDP, why is that not interesting? Like, why is that not something that they would?
Well, it's one bed gets you the equivalent, a credit of one unit, which is quite significant. So it's not that we're not in agreement, it's just that it's not feasible. Saddle River does not believe that they can convince, they know they can't convince the special master, and they know they can't convince fair share housing, and they do not believe that they will get a judge-approved plan that has a 24 bed facility at this site for disabled veterans. If they did believe that, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now, because Saddle River would be all on board. So it's just not feasible at this point to continue to pursue.
John, I'd like to hear from the residents. I know they've been waiting, and there's a couple of them on the line. We could discuss that as a council.
Mayor Rindo, and then I'll zip it. My only question is,
Who is,
they said 24 units when they thought the property was 2.3 acres and was not compromised. I heard talk about having there be a small townhouse complex. I heard a lot of different things. Once they realized, which the residents knew, that the property was environmentally challenged, that's why they came up with that from the beginning, the 24, because they thought the entire property could be used. 60% of that property cannot be used. So that's where the units came from the beginning. So I think, no, the unit, so I think 24 beds fits within the character. The building, the structure would be facing the same way. I don't really understand. That's my thought.
Thank you. Anyone? Who's next?
Mayor, I have Mr. Freeberg and then Mr. Casal. I'm trying to unmute Mr. Freeberg right now.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Freeberg.
So,
Rob Freeberg.
thank you guys, I think everybody did a great job. Thank you guys, I think everybody did a great job. There's a fence on the property right now. Do you know who owns that fence? And what is that on Woodcliff Lake land?
I don't know, we can ask our engineer.
We could check with the engineer, but unless there's an actual survey done, we wouldn't be able to answer that. But my guess, Mr. Freeberg, is that it's on their property because we would own from up to the curb or the curb. We don't own anything beyond the curb. Nothing, the town doesn't really own anything beyond the curb. Everybody has this right of way. Right of ways are not owned by the town. This is a great time to bring that up.
Right. I actually think that it would be a great suggestion if we could negotiate to have a fence put up on the other side of the berm that would be against Apple Ridge. I think that's a great idea, if we can get that. And then, keep in mind that would stop the residents of this new development from walking directly onto Apple Ridge from their site, but they could simply walk onto Woodcliff Ave and walk through the cut-through, which is likely what they would do to walk their dogs and to take a stroll in the evening or during the day. So I think no matter what we do, it's not going to stop them from coming. It might make it a little bit more difficult for them. And then one question, does anyone know the status of the sale of this property? Because my last understanding was that the town did not have this under contract.
My understanding that it is under contract, and they've also, I believe they secured the funding through a bond at this point. So I think that it's going to be, they're going to be able to purchase the property.
Okay, so it's a fait accompli.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone know what the price is?
No.
It was listed, I think, at 1.1 million.
But either way, that was part of their agreement, their fair share agreement, they have to purchase it. Correct, Mr. Scavino?
Yeah.
I believe
Yes.
so.
Purchase or secure it by eminent domain.
Correct, thank you, sir.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr.
Who's next?
Fuller. Mr. Casal, I'm muting him now, Michael Casal. Mr. Casal, are you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, yeah, I just want to say, I think it's, moving in the right direction. I just wanted to be clear, the agreement that we're being asked to enter into is strictly for the size of the building, correct?
No,
Or is it on the proposed plan with the shrubs and everything else associated with it?
it's going to contain the parameters that I set forth earlier, and the mayor is going to be meeting with the mayor of Saddle River to try to get even more detail than what I discussed. But it's going to include, in stores, whatever is specifically included in the agreement.
Okay, because my feeling is the devil's in the details. So, you know, I wasn't comfortable entering into an agreement unless we had some of those details ironed out, because I think, you know, aesthetically, what it's going to look like at the end of the day is going to really be most important. Because like you said, with Saddle River, it's their property, they can do what they want with it, but we really are, you know, need to make sure that from our perspective, on our side, that it, you know, it doesn't infringe on what the area looks like now.
And we're in full agreement. In fact, I have to tell you, this settlement agreement has probably gone through 10 different variations in the past 10 days, and it's still not 100% finalized. As I mentioned earlier, there's still going to be another meeting between the mayors to try to get even more detail included in it. But you're absolutely right, that's been our position. The more detail, the better, and we feel that's beneficial to both parties, so that there's not disputes down the road as to what was said or what was meant to be included.
Okay, and so one last question then, if I can. So when do we expect to see, you know, if we do enter into this agreement, it's all said and done, what's the timeline now? What are we looking at?
Well, the mayor and council would have to approve it. At Woodcliff Lake, that is, I'm speaking of. Saddle Rivers Council would have to approve it. That would all take place prior to July 10th. And then on July 10th, there would be an agreement, a hearing before the judge to approve the entire fair share affordable housing plan at Saddle River.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I don't see anyone with their hand raised, Mayor, on Zoom. The phone is not ringing.
Okay.
So I guess you need a motion to close the,
Well, we're going to continue discussions with Saddle River to nail down these items that were brought up.
I'm sorry, Mayor, just procedurally, we need a motion to close the public comment.
Yes, Mayor, if we can close the public comment first, and then...
Then we could.
Motion to close the public comment.
And make a motion to close.
Ms. Gross?
I'll second it.
Mr. Palanga, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you.
And so, if I just want to, again, I know, I've mentioned this, but I think that the residents, again, have to be fully aware. This mayor and council have been extremely involved in making sure this project is mitigated in terms of its impact on the residents of Woodcliff Lake. I've had multiple conversations with the mayor and members of the council, and I have to say, I think as a result of their concern and their diligence in ensuring that myself and the borough administrator and the engineer were making sure that our concerns were being heard, and that agreement, if it is entered into, includes the details that our residents have mentioned, that's what it would take for the governing body to sign off on any potential agreement. So I just want to again thank the mayor and council for their involvement, because I think without it, we would not be in the position that we're presently in. And I certainly would not have had the detail that I needed to make sure that, the concerns were included in any potential agreement.
And John, I just want to say that when we meet, I'd like to bring a council person to the meeting. Last time we met with them, they had 2 of their council people, so I'd like to have a council person or 2 to come with me to discuss more of these details. I wrote some notes down. I'll go over it with you, John, and maybe you could give a heads up to the attorney as to what we discussed, and then we'll reach out to Mayor Kerpis and their council. Is that good?
Sure.
All right. So,
Motion to, I think we're, unless council folks, mayor have anything, I guess.
oh yeah, any council members like to add some comments, anything?
All right, then,
No,
motion to
good.
close.
Nancy, you good? Steve, you good? All right.
So-
Is Marcin on?
Yes, sir, making sure I don't have him muted.
I just don't know which council people were on, that's,
Yes, he was on, Ms. Hayes is on, Ms. Gross.
okay,
Nancy goes.
okay.
All right,
So
so,
being no comments, motion, to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Falanga, Ms. Gross, all in favor?
Yes.
Yep. All in
Thank you.
favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, Mayor. We stand adjourned.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, email us, whatever, we'll try to get you as much information as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Thank you, everyone.
See you, Tom.
All right.